The Oregon Ballet Theater's Nutcracker Summer Sale is going on now through July 31st. You can twirl into the holidays with the best seats and best prices of the season by securing your tickets now at obt.org. This is one of their most special programs of the year, 18 performances, all with live orchestra. So get your summer sale tickets now while you can to George Balanchine's The Nutcracker, presented by Fred Meyer at obt.org. Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about a Portland renter beating his landlord in court and Mayor Wilson's tie-breaking vote on city dollars for public safety and why some are not that happy about it. Plus, we're looking into why our state systemically undercounts our poorest students. I'm your host, Claudia Meza, and with me are Willamette Week City Hall reporter Sophie Peel and Oregonian education reporter Julia Silverman.
Good morning, Claudia.
Thanks so much for having us, Claudia.
Yeah, Julia, you get a prize for coming in during your break. You're on vacation, and you were like, I'll still talk policy, so thank you.
That's because this is important. But thank you again for being willing to talk about wonky education stuff in the middle of the summer. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, as you both know, I usually kick things off with an opening question. And today's is based on this Oregonian story as reported by the great Amy Green. And it's pretty wild. So it all starts when renters Jonah Spring and Lindsay Sternett notify their property management company, Aetna Properties, already terrible start. Who would name their property company after, like, health insurance? Why? Why would you do that? Okay, whatever. So they notified them about this electrical outlet in the unit's main bedroom. The claim was that it was smoking, sparking, and there was sizzling, like a sound, coming out of it. It had actually melted off a prong from an alarm clock that had been plugged into it. And as most people know, a sizzling outlet usually means there's bad wiring. So it's something that, like, you shouldn't fix yourself if you're just a renter. So, like, good call to maybe make your landlord look into that, right? So that's what they do. Jonah puts in his request. A week later, this electrician hired by his landlord shows up, replaces the outlet, and basically just, like, anecdotally says, hey, this is probably the result of bad wiring from the 60s and 70s. I can just tell, like, this is just some wonky wiring. Even after all that, Aetna Properties still sent Jonah the $287 electrical bill. And then he received another and another, like basically 5 total, and 4 were marked on top with the words past due, which makes no sense. It's the same bill, and it's just like over and over and over, sent by the property management. Clearly, they just want him to pay for it. So Jonah and his partner, who were already financially struggling, refused to pay it. And then the landlord, knowing he had no other recourse since he had hired the electrician, just raised their rent in retaliation. And that's when Jonah and Lindsay lawyered up. They went to trial, and a jury awarded them $16,000, an amount that Oregon law doubles to $32,000 because of the nature of the violation. On top of that, Spring's attorneys are also entitled to ask a judge to order the landlord to pay all of his legal fees, an amount that currently stands at $225,000. So now this landlord who refused to pay a $287 electrical bill, which now a court of law also agrees was his responsibility, is on the hook for over $250,000, which is not very smart, if you ask me. All of this brings me to my opening question. What is your worst renter horror story?
I have one. This was like pandemic, really, like 2020 to around 2022, I think. I moved into this apartment, and it was just like a duplex. It was, 1 unit on the top and 1 unit on the bottom. We were on the bottom, and it was owned by this, like, a very, very sweet, very, very old, like, religious lady. And, she would always bring us little things, and she was just so sweet. And, I really loved my room. I was paying $500 for the room. Like, it was dirt
Unheard
cheap,
of.
but it also reflected that because, like, there were just, like, drawers missing in the kitchen, and there was certainly the issues just abounded. I mean, they were unlimited issues. And because she was so nice and old and sweet, we, like, didn't really want to bug her or ask for repairs, so we rarely did. Anyways, one day she comes storming over and, like, basically brings my roommate to tears because she's berating us for not weeding in the front yard. And Like, basically the gist of it was that if we didn't start weeding the front yard, which was fine, by the way, like, there were issues bigger than the weeds in the front yard, like, she was gonna jack up our rent. Anyways, it was just it's like one of those people where you're like, oh, they're so nice, they're so gentle, and then suddenly it's like, bam!
Yeah.
Like a switch goes off. So then we were scared of her for a really long time.
Did she jack up your rent?
I think she may have raised it, but like not because of that. But I mean, granted, we weren't like the best renters too. I mean, no, we were good renters, but we did do one thing that we weren't supposed to do, which in case she's listening, I'm not going to say what we did.
God damn it. Now I want to know. Julia, what about you?
All right. So let's see. A renter horror story. I moved to Portland as part of a great wave of sort of like shiny young things from around the country who descended upon Portland in like 2000, 2001, 2002. And like 85% of us moved to some shared house just off of Hawthorne Boulevard. Mine was indeed that. And we had a basement apartment because my then boyfriend, now husband, was too cheap to let us rent anything else. And he was like, it will be cool in the summertime. But it was, in fact, incredibly depressing because, as we know, it rains all the time in Portland, and like we were in a basement all the time. So that was no good. But the real issue was that across the street was this incredibly sketchy house where I'm pretty sure there was like, I mean, listen, I have no basis for this, but I'm not going to get sued because I'm not saying anybody's names. I'm pretty sure there was some sort of like meth situation across the street. And when my then boyfriend, now husband, was moving our stuff was like in a U-Haul, he backed into their basketball hoop. They had this like super crappy basketball hoop and broke it. And it was so terrifying because the guy who owned the meth house like came over and like banged on the door and was like, you owe me a basketball hoop. So we had to spend all this money that we probably didn't have to like put up this basketball hoop, which we did immediately because we were like, we are not going to mess with these people. Mm-hmm. And then like very soon after that, I hired a realtor and I was like, we're buying a house. We're out. Like, I don't want to live here anymore.
I love that it went from a renter horror story to just like, and that's why we bought a house. Because we were just like...
Well, because I need to say, it was Portland in 2002, and it was possible for a journalist and a wildlife biologist to buy a house. Ha!
I know.
That was fun 25 years ago.
I missed that. I was still in college. Such a bummer.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever. Well, you guys, thank you both for your answers. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, Sophie has the play-by-play on a recent dramatic council vote, which involved the mayor breaking a tie for the first time in his tenure. I heard it went really well, so I can't wait to hear about it.
Everyone was really nice to each other.
Yeah, everyone was stoked, I'm sure.
As per usual.
Yeah. Got leftover paint, stain, or varnish taking up space in your basement or garage? You're not alone. Many of us finish a project and end up with half-used cans we're just not sure what to do with. Don't let them sit there collecting dust, taking up space. Recycle them with Paint Care. Whether it's cans from a recent renovation or years of storage, Paint Care helps ensure your paint is managed responsibly and kept out of landfills. Drop off your cans for free at one of more than 175 conveniently located drop-off sites across Oregon. To find a drop-off site near you, visit paintcare.org. That's paintcare.org. Sophie, were you physically present at this council vote?
No, I probably should have been, but sometimes I watch council meetings from my couch, and by that I mean often.
No, that's how I do it. Okay, I didn't watch this one. What was the mood like?
Okay,
set the mood here.
This meeting on Wednesday was sort of the culmination of like a 5-6 week debate discussion around two different theories of how the council should retroactively preserve jobs, about 30 to 50, depending on the proposal you're talking about, that they had approved to cut on January 18th when they ratified the budget. So backing up a little bit, the council approved their fiscal year 26-27 budget on June 18th, but they were all basically unhappy about the final product, even though they all voted, almost all of them voted for it. So as soon as they passed that budget, they were like, ugh, there's a bunch of jobs that the city's going to cut, but we actually don't want them to get cut. primarily in public safety and then some in parks as well. So these two proposals emerged from the Peacock Caucus, which is the Progressive Caucus, and then the Moderate Caucus, which right now they don't have a cute little moniker yet, but I think they're working on it.
We're calling them everybody else, just everybody else.
Yes, the Peacocks and everyone else. And believe me, I have heard a lot from the moderates about how unhappy they are every time, like, we call them moderate or centrist. Like, they freak out because they're like, we're not moderates, we're not centrists. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what else to call you. Anyways, so these two proposals emerged. There was the Peacock proposal, which wanted to use primarily interest accrued from the Portland Clean Energy Fund tax, which is our city's climate tax. They wanted to use interest from that to fund, sort of a slate of jobs in fire, police, and then also a fair amount of jobs in the Parks Department. And then the moderate proposal wanted to use money from the general fund contingency to save a lot of the same jobs, not parks jobs for the most part. And they also wanted to restore $3 million in police training, which the Peacocks were really against. But what really was at issue was how the moderates wanted to fund this package. So they wanted to take it from the general fund contingency, and then they wanted to replenish the general fund contingency with underspending across the bureaus. And if we look at the last year, the greatest source of underspending across the city was in the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability. I think I got that right. That is a new office that was set up to support the new police accountability body that hasn't actually started its work yet. The 21 members just got seated earlier this spring, and hopefully they're going to start their work next year, but they've had a lot of delays. So this body is the product of a 2020 voter-approved ballot measure approved by 82% of voters, which is sort of unheard of for ballot measures, to basically set up a stronger, accountability apparatus for the Portland police and issues of misconduct. And this, body is going to have powers that our previous kind of police accountability body didn't have. But they've had a lot of delays. Anyways, the Peacocks were very, very upset that this police accountability, which has a $16 million budget this year because charter mandated, they have a budget that is no less than equivalent to 5% of the Portland Police Bureau budget, which, as many people know, is a really, really big budget. So this body that doesn't yet have an executive director, only has one staff, really hasn't hired up in any capacity, has a $16 million budget. They will almost certainly underspend their budget this year. And so the moderates were like, look, they're probably going to underspend. We'll look at all underspending across the city to refill the general fund contingency, but it's probably going to be a lot from the OCPA. And the Peacocks were like, don't you dare touch that. So this has been like, a 5-week discussion. So yesterday, a couple things happened. One, the Peacock ordinance came first, 6-6 tie. So for the first time in his tenure, Mayor Keith Wilson had the ability to break the tie. He had to break the tie, actually, and he voted no. So he killed the Peacock proposal, which set off a lot of hard feelings amongst the Peacocks. So they sort of went on the offense. I think the most memorable exchange is when Councilor Angelita Murillo said something to the effect of, it's such a shame that the, quote, daddy of the city of Portland has to break a tie for us because we can't reach compromise. And then Councilor Loretta Smith said, who are you calling daddy? Councilor Murillo said, he's your daddy, he's not my daddy. And then Councilor Smith said, I already have a daddy. And it was just like, oh my God. I gotta say, it was like entertaining, to
Of course
watch.
it's entertaining, but I don't want my council to be entertaining.
I know. That's the thing. I don't think it helps with some Portlanders having a hard time taking this council seriously. It is not, that's the sort of thing that I don't think helps.
I've never gotten secondhand embarrassment before. I don't know if you can see I'm blushing, but I'm just like, that is the cringiest exchange.
Every time I hear about one of these things, I thank my lucky stars for the Portland Public Schools Board, which, while not exactly functional, has not stooped to this level as yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so sad when you have to be like, at least the PPS has decorum.
Yeah, it was a pretty remarkable exchange. Then after a very feisty 20 minutes of debates and exchanging barbs, the moderate proposal, which does save 30 jobs, mostly in police and fire, did pass. And most of the Peacocks actually voted for it. It was a 10-2 vote in the end. They basically said that, I guess this is better than nothing, but we don't like it. So it was lot of drama yesterday. Wilson for the first time broke a tie, which like is sort of an interesting thing because Mayor Wilson is sort of seen as more politically aligned with the moderates on council. The Peacocks really don't want the council to ever be in a position where Wilson is going to break the tie because they think they know how that's going to go. And they were right on this one. It did go the way they thought it was going to go. And then on the other side of things, Councillor Smith has always said he should be breaking every single tie, whether it's for amendments to the budget or final ordinances. Right now, the city attorney has determined that he likely only has tiebreak powers on final ordinances, so final policies, not like amendments to policies. So that's been a whole issue on council. So yeah, it was a very rich meeting yesterday, both in terms of like drama and also like procedure. We saw something we haven't seen yet.
I'm curious as to why Mayor Wilson decided to vote against the proposal that Peacock brought forward, because if you look at their proposal, they were going to save more jobs. And like, if I were just looking at it like as in, let's save more jobs, why not that one? And also like, what is the superior funding structure that is like, hey, let's bank on future monies that don't exist yet to let's bank on this interest that is there and isn't being used. And either of those, there are pros and cons. There's a lot of people that are just like, don't touch any piece of money, and then there's also just like, why are we being so fiscally irresponsible that we're just like, we'll pay it later, which by the way, a lot of those same counselors were definitely against. Do you guys remember the budget back and forth? There was a lot of, hey, let's not do contingency budgeting because that's not fiscally responsible. But yet they all were like, let's do it here, though. So it doesn't make, what I'm saying is none of it makes sense. And what I hear as a constituent is just like, you guys are just fighting over a ball.
Yeah.
You guys are fighting over a political ball.
This is a really like rich topic, I think, because both sides kept saying the other package was fiscally irresponsible, right? And this is an ongoing debate between the two sides of who's the more practical one, who's the one that's actually making strong fiscal decisions for the city. I think an outsider could say, you guys made hard decisions in the budget, which is your job. And then as soon as you got pushback from, unions and employees and whoever else, political pressure, basically, you collapsed and you said, oh, we're going to undo all the hard decisions that we just made. The city is not going to have a better budget next year. It's probably going to be worse. And that's probably going to continue on for a couple of years. And so, when they restored this funding through this package or whichever package would have passed, like they would have been undoing some of the really difficult decisions that they made. And I'm not saying those were necessarily like no cuts are good cuts, right? And especially, the cuts that they did ratify in the budget, some of them were very controversial and cut programs and services that people like thought were wrong. And so, yes, there's a real argument for the council coming back and saying, hey, look, we made some mistakes. But I think it's also like, well, the funding that you just approved, it's 1 year. So you're going to have to figure this out at some point. Like you are kicking the can down the road, which is what every city council does, right?
Yeah.
Like no city council wants to be the council that makes huge cuts to public safety. That's a horrible look, especially when they're all trying to get reelected. But yeah, I think as an outsider, you could say, okay, let's put aside the fight over which package was better. First of all, you guys are undoing the thing that you just approved. So like, why didn't you just not approve it in the first place? And second, like cuts are going to have to happen at some point, whether it's now or 12 months from now, like they're going to happen.
But why do you think Mayor Wilson decided to go for the proposal?
I don't know.
You don't?
I do not know. I mean, I think I've listened to both arguments about why one package is better than the other package. And I can really see both sides. I don't know whether Wilson's decision was based on, I don't know. I just, I don't even want to
speculate on that.
I don't want to speculate on that.
Julia, what do you think? It's not your beat. You can just jump in. Speculate
That's
away.
true. I'm allowed to have an opinion on this one. I mean, I'm just like everybody else. I think there must be something in the budget to cut that isn't public safety or parks or some other very popular program. And I'm like, why can't you find that?
Yes.
Why does it have to be the other stuff? And maybe that's a fallacy. I don't know the city budget inside and out, but it does always feel like the things they choose to cut are the things that they know are going to cause pain.
I've personally found things in the budget that I was like, maybe that should go instead of the PS3s and the parks employees who clean up trash. Like I found things where I'm like,
Well, thank you for breaking that down, Sophie. So disappointing. We've had City Councilor Angelita Morillo on. We've asked, her opinions on as to why everything's so cantankerous, and she kind of just like deflected and explained why Steve Novick in particular was hard to work with, which I thought was an interesting...
they are very much at odds, those two.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, Julia's going to tell us about why the state keeps undercounting its poorest students. All right, so first off, Julia, can you explain undercounting students and why it's such a big deal?
Yeah, so as you may or may not know, there's always a big fight about how much money should be spent on the education in the state of Oregon. And in the state of Oregon's eyes, all students are not created equal. Gosh, that sounds weird. Let me try to explain a little bit more. Your student who has no special needs and goes to a school where the teacher experience levels are pretty similar to everyone else around the state is worth about a little over $11,000 per year to educate to their school district. But as kids get extra needs, right, if they're learning to speak English, if they have special education plans, or importantly, if they come from families who are experiencing poverty, they get extra money. And that's how we get to the average of what Oregon spends per pupil, which is about $18,000. What I explored in my recent series in the Oregonian was that Oregon is the only state in the country that is solely reliant on the Census Bureau's Small Area Income Poverty Estimates, or SAPE, to calculate how many poor students are in each district. And it turns out that that data is incredibly lagging, incredibly imprecise. And then, just to put the cherry on the crappy sundae, Oregon then takes that data and manipulates it further and makes their best guesstimate of how many students in each district may or may not go to private school, and minuses them out too. And what you get is, according to the study commissioned by the Salem-Keizer School District, about 100,000 students, a little more than that, being left out of the count. So those 100,000 students, each one of them should or could be getting an extra $2,800 per year to help meet their needs. And they're not getting it. Now, that's the gist. I'll stop. Ask me another question. Ask me all the questions.
Okay, wait. But how does this affect the money? Like, I don't understand the connection between, okay, so they're getting undercounted. They could be getting extra money, but how does that affect, is it, because how is the estimate basically, unlocking those funds?
The deal is there's a fixed amount of money available for public ed in Oregon. From the state general fund, it was about $11.4 billion, that's billion with a B, for the current fiscal biennium. And usually each legislative session, there's a giant fight over what that number is going to be. It's called, because Salem loves acronyms, it's called the CSL, or current service level. How much money do we need to spend so that schools can offer exactly what they're offering and nobody will have to be cut? Whether or not the CSL actually gets you to that level, it's another story. And it's kind of a callback to what Sophie was talking about, right? The money is there, it's how you spend it and what you choose to spend it on. But I guess that's another story. So basically, if there's only a fixed pot of money and you know that you're undercounting poor students, you could choose to take money and give it just, why not? Just be like, okay, fine. School districts like Reynolds, which is the district that I focused on, or Centennial, or Gresham Barlow, or Park Rose, or Salem-Keizer, that educate really high concentrations of students who live in poverty, just give them more money. Problem is, and this is where the politics come in, you guys tell me, who's in charge in Salem? It's wait, should I answer my own question, or do you want to tell me?
I would imagine that it's the governor.
Okay, yes, but also it is lawmakers primarily from Portland, Beaverton, and some of the other, right? And you try telling them, okay, we're taking money away from your school district. It is not a super popular position. It's not something that any politician wants to defend. It's just like Sophie said, it's not super easy to be like, hey, we're the ones that made all the cuts for public safety. Re-elect us. It's not going to bring you a giant amount of acclaim from your voters. So this is the situation. It's the way it has been since 1991. It's the way it's going to stay. At least until, I hope, now. And I don't want to sound like Pollyanna-ish about this, but I would say that the poverty metric, the way that Oregon counts poor students, is maybe the most visible problem with the state's funding formula, but it is really far from the only problem. It turns out that the way we count special education students is also super flawed, right? And we overweight for teacher experience. So it is really unusual to have a funding formula for education that has not been revised since 1991. And that's where we are in Oregon. It's now one of the oldest funding formulas in the country. Nobody wants to take on redoing it. And yet, I would say there are some signs that lawmakers are realizing this isn't a particular can that they can kick down the road for too much longer.
So we're just going to need a hero, is what I'm hearing. Someone who comes in, doesn't care about getting reelected, actually just does what needs to get done and moves along.
Claudia, you're so smart. That is exactly what we need. I mean, look.
I can tell if you're being sarcastic, but I'm just going to take it. I'm just like, thank you.
No, that is leadership and the governance structure around education in Oregon is pretty flawed. The governor is the state superintendent of public education. So technically, the buck should stop with her. Oregon got rid of having an elected superintendent of public instruction. Gosh, I don't remember, sometime around the early to mid 2010s, something in there. And the last governor that many observers say really, really prioritized education was John Kitzhaber, right? Now, that's not to say that, the current governor doesn't care about education or that Kate Brown didn't. Everybody has their challenges. But it is true that there hasn't been somebody in Salem with the kind of smarts, know-how, institutional memory, and political courage to take this one on. I would say there are some people emerging. Keep an eye on Representative Ricky Ruiz. He's the co-chair of the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Education. He also happens to have gone to the Reynolds School District.
Oh, wow.
And really importantly, he's got a kid. His small child is starting school in the Gresham Barlow School District pretty soon. And I think that having that kind of personal investment in the school system really sharpens your focus and makes you pretty clear-eyed about what the problems are and what needs to be done.
Well, Julia, I'm so glad that you're looking into this, and I hope that this reporting, what you're uncovering, and we'll link to your stories because there were some pretty convincing and just, kind of sad personal stories that you tracked. And it just kind of made the wonky policy issue sort of come to life.
I really appreciate that because it was unusual, the access that I got from the Reynolds School District. I really want to take this opportunity to thank the folks there and just to kind of drive home the point that, it's not the same. I often hear people in Portland being like, oh no, there's 1 or 2 kids in my child's classroom and they're really a problem and the teacher has to spend all their time on them. You guys don't know. In some of these really high needs districts, it's like every kid is really bringing a lot from home with them to school. And Oregon could and should be doing more for them.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for breaking down some of your stories, Julia. Always a pleasure to have you on. You as well, Sophie. But before we head out, we have some member shout-outs. That's one of the perks of being a paying member of CityCast Portland. You have the opportunity to shout out a local business or organization that you love. Sophie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I have one here from listener Sandra W., who says, I want to send some love to Belmont Books at 3415 Southeast Belmont Street, a little shop with a lot of heart. Go support your local bookstore. Books fight fascism, just saying. ...
Just saying. Well, here's another one from Tori C. that says, Rhinestone on Southeast Clinton, good people, good food, good drinks. That was straight to the
Simple.
point.
Perfunctory.
Love it. Shout out to Sandra W. and Tori C. And a special thank you to Jonathan F. and Linda R. for becoming CityCast Portland neighbors this week. When you join as a Portland neighbor, we'd also be happy to read your shout outs of places you love in Portland. Plus, we're going to get a bunch of other perks like ad-free listening, merch, and invites to member-only events. You can join at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging with me. Julia, thank you so much for breaking your vacation time. I know you were just taking a dip in the ocean. Thanks for swimming back, talking to us. Appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's always so much fun.
Coming up, we have a sponsored conversation with Kim Henry, industrial hygienist from SAFE, that's State Accident Insurance Fund, to talk about what Portland businesses and employers need to do right now to get their teams ready for wildfire smoke season. Hey, Claudia here with Kim Henry, industrial hygienist from SAFE, that's the State Accident Insurance Fund. Kim, welcome to CityCast Portland. So good to have you. How's it going?
It's good. Going good. Thanks, Claudia.
Before we jump in, could you explain what SAFE is to somebody who has no idea? Like me, 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah, SAFE. So SAFE Corporation, it's a not-for-profit, state-chartered. We provide prevention services and workers' comp claim services to Oregon employers.
Cool. So if I ever fall off my chair and land on my mic, I'll just give you guys a call.
Well, hopefully give us a call first so we prevent you from falling off your chair. How's that? That's even better. That's what we like to do.
Well, speaking of prevention, after such a dry winter, experts are warning that this could be a very tough wildfire season. And for Portland employers, they might think that smoke is annoying, but not that serious. How serious is it of a health risk to the workers?
It's very serious, actually. There's different people respond differently, depending on their their health condition as it is. But when you talk about kids in school or you talk about folks working out in the field who are going to be exposed to it all day long, for instance, these can be major impacts for sure for workers and employers, not to mention property damage for businesses and things like that. So. Yeah, it's a serious issue, and we're in that season right now where it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
I know a big reason you're here is to essentially bring awareness to wildfire smoke plans. And I was curious if you could share a real-life example of a business that actually had one in place, which I got to be honest, this is the first time I've heard of such a thing. How it actually made a difference for their staff.
I had a welding shop that actually, because they usually use a lot of outside air too, they'll have a big roll-up door and they'll be welding. They shut the roll-up door and kept trying to work for a little while. And then it got to a point where even that was not going to work. So they actually called it and had an early day that day. And they just knew they had to do that. So. It depends on your business. It depends on what you can do to protect your workers. Sometimes you got to keep working out there too. So having N95 masks for folks to wear, making sure they wear those and that's not causing another issue, that's something else you can do.
Right. So a few things for that, for employers to just already have in place would be masks and
a
game plan.
Yep.
Well, for Portland businesses who want to build such a plan, where do they get started?
Well, they could definitely go to SAFE at safe.com/prepare. There's basically 7 points that we talk about. So first of all, having some, we call them filtering face piece respirators. They're like the N95s that folks know about. Putting together a written plan and talking through that and identifying, who's going to actually make the call and then training your employees on that, and then having somebody monitoring the weather and the air quality index out there. Sometimes there's fixed air quality indexes. In Portland proper, you're going to have some air quality index air monitors out there that EPA has put out or DEQ has control over, and you can actually use that data to know when things are getting pretty bad out there, and then actually acting on that, depending on what the air quality is. Maybe it's 100 and you're just kind of monitoring things and it might be getting bad, but once it gets up over 200, 250, especially if it gets into the 300 to 500 level, then you actually start shutting things down or moving work or rescheduling things. If you've got outside workers, that's really key too. Just making sure that you've got a plan for those workers.
For sure.
And then if you've got field employees that are outside of town, and maybe they're agriculture workers or they're actually in vehicles, that you have a game plan for two-way communication and you know where they are at all times.
Awesome. Well, Kim, thank you so much for hanging out and giving us this important message. Because honestly, it's one of those things where, working from home and mostly being an office worker most of my life, it's something you don't think about, but it's something we definitely have to consider here in Oregon. For anyone listening, if you want more tools and resources to help build your wildfire smoke plan, I'm thinking even for your own house, head over to saif.com/prepare. That's saif.com/prepare. Thank you so much for listening. And again, thank you for taking the time, Kim.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our production team this week was John Notariani, Julia Fiaioni, Rachel Monahan, Jesse Wiza, and myself. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by All the Kimonos. Our ad music is by Sven Linville and Sarah the Instrumentalist from Epidemic Sound via Getty Images. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.